Hi, I'm James Pett.
And I'm Travis Clausen-Knight. And we are choreographers. We always get stuck with this introduction, but we are choreographers based in London, or at least from the UK. And currently we are creating a lot of our work internationally and have been doing so for a while. And right now we're residing here in Italy for a few months before we head to Mexico.
Es Travis y James, que están haciendo una residencia de varios meses en Milán, mientras vienen a México y luego van a regresar allá. Y comenzaron, bueno, en Inglaterra, son de allá, del UK, Unión
Reino Unido.
Ajá, en la Gran Bretaña, y ahora tienen, y luego han trabajado por varios países, y de momento están en Milán.
It's a lovely question. We first met in 2013 when we danced for a company in London called Wayne McGregor. He's a very well-known choreographer in the world. And we danced together with the company, I think, for about 7 years. So during that time, we started to connect, and we found that we had a similar interest to create outside, and then it sort of grew from there.
Juntos estuvieron en la compañía en el 2013 con una compañía de un señor McGregor, bien conocido internacionalmente, y con él trabajaron durante 7 años aproximadamente, y desde entonces se dieron cuenta que tenían afinidades en trabajar juntos y en hacer proyectos.
Kind of. I was actually born originally in South Africa, but I moved to the UK when I was very, very young. So I very much became a British citizen by that point. So I'm now more or less, as you can tell by my accent, very English.
I am originally from London in the UK. I was born there, but my father is English, but my mother's from Thailand. So, but I've grew up, and I've a UK resident, but I've often go back and forth from Thailand as well.
James dice que nació en Londres y su madre, sin embargo, es tailandesa, pero siempre fue de Londres. Y el otro chico, creo que dice es que fue de África del Sur, o sudafricano originalmente, y ahora está desde muy chiquito viviendo en Londres y en la Unión Británica. Así que es inglés.
Well, the basis of IMAGO is the idea, obviously, is that it's about a relationship, and the purpose of understanding the sort of dysfunctions that can occur in relationships. And we very much, throughout the creation, found that the piece focuses on that development of when we try to resist accepting when those dysfunctions take over, where we allow certain difficulties to become normal to us. And eventually it goes so far that we have to end up kind of accepting that something isn't right or something isn't good within a relationship, that eventually has to be given away to depart from and sort of leave behind.
Y la contestación es que se trata de relaciones, y lo que ven es que muchas relaciones pues llegan a ser disfuncionales, y esa disfuncionalidad llega a ser como normal, como aceptada. Y bueno, pues es como la trama de la coreografía.
And from that, we have this idea as well of how we try to create these architectures throughout our relationships to kind of protect ourselves or to create some other reality, which kind of goes into the definition of what imago means. Sort of the psychoanalysis of it is the idea of the images we create of other things that, the idea of a child and a parent, they see an image of each other that when it changes, it's quite startling, it's quite a sudden thing. And we very much were trying to find the idea of how we finally embrace that change and finally leave it behind. But more so as well that there isn't exactly one victim and one enemy, that we are actually sometimes victims of our own making in these situations. We sometimes choose to continue to make these things happen rather than making them stop.
Que hay en las relaciones que se han ido, bueno, suceden cambios dentro de estas tensiones por la disfuncionalidad, y en función de eso, de repente es como la relación entre un padre y un hijo cuando cambia, de repente cuesta trabajo entender o ajustarse a ese cambio, de manera tal que hay dos opciones, las dos. Una es como la imagen que tienes, de ahí la palabra IMAGO, la imagen que tienes de esa persona que está cambiando o no cambiando, y que a veces se elige seguir en esta relación disfuncional, el no cambiar. A veces sí se cambia y se deja lo que estaba mal atrás.
I mean, I think like the beauty of going to the theatre and seeing a performance is you don't see what you see in normal life. We always have images and things around us, but we go to the theatre to see something that you don't normally see, and to transport you to a place that is fantasy or something that is virtuosic or something that is not seen on the daily surface of life. And I think it's important for us to push and find research and expose things, because I think as humans right now, we need to feel those emotions, whether they're super high or super dark, or there needs to be a way in which we can twist the audience and make them kind of respond. So for us, it's important to have that space to go wherever we want to go without any limitations.
La contestación es que, bueno, en el escenario tratas de buscar algo que no es una relación cotidiana, sino algún lado diferente, ya sea una relación mágica, o en todo caso puede ser extra o cotidiana, o que le das una torsión y muestras los lados que en la cotidianidad no se suelen mostrar de las relaciones. Es un poco por ahí la idea.
I think the other thing to add to that, to sort of emphasize what James said, is that theatre and dance does hold a sense of fantasy, and there is something that we sometimes use to forget about reality. And the reality of life is that it's not always kind, it's not always beautiful in that way, but it's made from some of the darker things that actually create beauty as well. There is a beauty in how we come out of something dark. There is a beauty in how we find ourselves through a moment of trauma or impact or anything like that. And there's a sense of strength or solidarity in who we become as well. But also the idea of the memories that get left behind, or the experiences that we create from that. There's something very, very powerful, that the dark is not necessarily something terrible, but something profound in some ways.
Y también pensando en términos de fantasía, la fantasía te permite uno pues sacar este lado oscuro, que no necesariamente es algo negativo, algo oscuro, pues es más bien como algo profundo, y la fantasía te permite sacar esto en el escenario y darle vida, y que tenga una profundidad, digamos, extra cotidiana a través de toda la fantasía, ¿no?
Yeah, it's interesting. With every work we have, there's always a new discovery about what our technique or our movement can express with that. And it's something very much we're finding a lot more recently, that when we undertake creations, or when we put something into a creation, we're very much always asking ourselves why. Why is that movement saying that, or why am I doing something, or what is the why about? And we always ask the question why, which then helps us define what is actually being seen by an audience. And it's that same thing of, if you look into a crowd, you could ask the same questions about what you're seeing, and if you were able to hear conversations or interactions, would the actions or the physicality of what people show you say what you imagine as well? And I think that's kind of where we find that body language, as you say, that sort of conversation that happens and overlaps in our work.
Bueno, se construye a partir de cada vez preguntárselo, cada vez que hacen una obra nueva, cómo es el asunto que quieren tratar. Y ese asunto tiene que ver con, también si miraras a un público y le preguntaras o escucharas sus conversaciones, cómo se expresaría. Eso es como...
It's almost as, I think it's more to say that if we observe, when we've been in the streets and we observe as a general thing, we look at people and we try to imagine someone off in the distance, what conversation they might be having. We might not know, but by seeing it, we might understand. It's the idea of the interpretation of what we observe from that could possibly give us the language.
Okay. Es como cuando están observando gente, digamos, en la calle, cómo se mueven, que no está uno oyendo la conversación, pero te la puedes imaginar a través de, digamos, su lenguaje corporal o lo que está sucediendo. Es a través de la observación de la vida cotidiana o de la gente moviéndose en la vida cotidiana que se puede uno imaginar o crear un lenguaje específico para cada obra.
We both obviously love flowers, but we did a lot of research about the language of flowers, and that each flower actually has a meaning to it, has a symbolic meaning. And that really fascinated us, and actually was sort of the starting point of creating the different scenes that we have in the piece. So they sort of became the first anchor point for deciding a scene. And for instance, one part is called Iris, which is the flower, and it's like a solo that I do that's about solitude and being alone. So that was sort of the beginning points. And then we thought about, well, what happens if the bouquet dictates the scene from the language in a kind of secret way that the audience don't quite know, but actually the flower is revealing the truth behind what's actually happening.
Entonces contestan que, bueno, obviamente a ellos les gustan las flores, pero hicieron una investigación sobre el sentido de cada flor, y cada una tiene un simbolismo diferente. Por ejemplo, el solo que él hace, que se llama Iris, tiene que ver con la soledad. Y entonces cuando pensaron pues en un buqué, en un ramo de flores, este ramo tendría que las flores ir dictando el sentido de la escena.
Additionally, the other side, as we talked about the idea of us creating architectures, we kind of thought, how do you sort of create not an irony, but a sense of that irony of what we see on the surface to what is happening underneath? So the literal use of the flowers coming onto the stage as new sections evolve and as different things happen throughout the piece is the idea that these two people are kind of placing things in their relationship to create a false beauty. Because often we do see these flowers and we think they're beautiful, they're stunning. But if there's a secret message underneath that's not as beautiful and wonderful and positive, is that sort of what we do in our relationships? When something is going wrong, do we hide it under the surface and tell everybody that everything's great until finally it kind of all falls apart and it becomes not so beautiful anymore?
Hay algo más, hay como una arquitectura en las obras en las que se busca como la ironía de lo que sucede en la realidad, que es que así como las flores siempre decimos superficialmente, ¡ay, qué bonitas! Pueden tener algo no tan bonito por debajo. En las relaciones pasa lo mismo. Tratamos de que aunque ya no está tan bonito lo que está sucediendo por debajo, siga la superficie, habiendo esta cosa como de la superficie, muy bella, todo lindo, todo hermoso, aunque no sea cierto. Y esa ironía, eso quieren como irónicamente representarlo conforme van trayendo las flores al escenario y se va desarrollando una escena y la otra y la otra.
Big universal question.
I definitely agree. I think dance is one of the most basic forms of self-expression we have since a very early point in history. It's not one of the only, obviously, singing and everything else, but it's a way of communicating directly, elusively, mysteriously, and beautifully all at once. And I think that we have bodies that communicate all the time. And what is dance but just simply communicating with a body? And I think that's what makes it such a powerful tool, because also you don't have the advantage of words, you don't have the advantage of a sound. You still have to encapsulate something as a physical form. And it has to also be something that comes from within to truly go so far as to communicate to people with the assistance of music or set or anything. But fundamentally, dance's power is the fact that it comes from within so much, that it is so truly honest beyond the surface.
Y la contestación es, por un lado, es como una de las expresiones más elementales o más antiguas del ser humano, aunque haya otros como la música, y que no tiene el estorbo de la danza, de la palabra, es más libre que la palabra, y entonces, al mismo tiempo, te obliga a hacer una expresión como muy desde adentro, y que no tiene ese intermediario de la palabra, es real, es profunda, y si no es, y para que comunique tiene que venir muy de adentro.
That's a really interesting question. I think for me, it's about being able to continue to do what I love to do, which is to connect and to self-express and to, get the opportunity to, for me, it's about the continuation to grow. And it's always been about that for me. And I think to have that opportunity to continue to keep developing what we do is the most important thing for me. I mean, it's fantastic for us that we've done very, very big, prestigious theatres, and I will always hold them very close to me. But I think at this point in our career, I mean, I speak for myself, I'm sure it's the same for Travis, that it's now about researching very much our own voice and what we want to say, and the challenge of how to translate that, referring back to the question about the importance of dance, but how we can translate the things that we want to say through dance. And that's really what I want to achieve moving forward, is how to really do that really well.
Es seguir creciendo y de alguna manera encontrar la voz propia a través de la exploración. Claro, la experiencia de haber estado en lugares importantes, pues es algo que está cerca del corazón, pero no es la última meta. La última meta es, en última instancia, seguir creciendo a través de la propia voz, ¿no? En la danza.
I think something else, obviously, you know, James's perspective, for me, it's interesting to see how our work can always communicate and help people reflect, help people see a difference of reality, but also to be able to have work that is placed in a surrounding, in an environment that's very honest and makes people stop for a second and actually go, oh, I can see something for myself. I can feel something about myself, or I can actually begin to understand myself, not try to understand the dance. And I think that, you know, something that would be wonderful to achieve is for people to expect our work as a thing that allows them to, for a second, disappear and almost imagine that the work was made especially for them, directly for them. And that for a moment in their life, that they were the inspiration behind that work.
Y también Chávez agrega que para él, más allá de encontrar la propia voz, es también que el público, que quien ve una obra, pueda darse como una pausa, un momento, y que esa obra hable a él de tal forma que sintiera como si esa obra hubiese sido hecha para él. No es nada más como hacerlo para expresarme yo o expresarse ellos, sino más allá de eso, que el público tenga el gusto o la oportunidad de identificarse de tal manera con la obra que pare y diga, ah, me dice algo, ah, es como si la obra fuera hecha para mí.
We first came to Mexico in, 2015 or 16, in Guadalajara with the company Wayne McGregor at the time. So that was our first time in Mexico, which we absolutely loved it. Beautiful. And then I came back last year with the British Council, and I made a piece on some Mexican dancers last year. And now we're coming back.
Yeah. I think our expectations are very open.
Yeah.
Y dicen que como por ahí del 2015-16 vinieron por primera vez con Wayne McGregor a Guadalajara con la compañía, y después volvieron el año pasado y trabajaron con bailarines mexicanos haciendo una pieza para ellos. Y su expectativa pues es muy buena.